That's what I use.
Good afternoon, councillors, staff, members of the public and the Youth Council and anybody who's decided to zoom in. Welcome to this meeting of the Community Wellbeing Committee. I'll declare it open. We have an apology for lateness from Councillor Stewart, an apology from Reverend Cook, and Councillor Crackett should be joining at some stage by Zoom.
And Peter Kett as well, Chair.
And Councillor Kett. Want to move that those are accepted, Mayor Clark? And Pania, thank you. Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried. Let's leap ahead and go to the presentation of the report from the Youth Council, since you've done us the honour of turning up early. Welcome along.
Ka kueti, ka kurahi, kei ngā pauaniwa o tēnei whare. Nei rā ngā mihi e rere atu ki a koutou katoa. Ki a koe, te koro mātua o te kaunihira, te kaihautu o te waka nei, nei rā te ohaki e rere atu ki a koe. Anō nei, te taha mana whenua, nei rā ngā mihi, me te kaunihira katoa, papaki kawana ngā tai o mihi ki a koutou katoa. Kia ora Mayor, Councillors and Representatives, mana whenua representatives, sorry. My name is Hannah Davis and I'm a student at Te Wharekura o Arowhenua.
Kia ora, I'm Emma Pope from Grouse High and this is my first year on Youth Council.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Alexander Black from Verdon and this is my third year on Council.
I take our annual report as read and we're just going to go over a few of our highlights from this year. This year was my first ever year on Youth Council and quickly I realised that this was something I wanted to be heavily involved in. Although the setting was very new and foreign to me, I quickly learnt that it was a safe space for individuals like me to share their passions with each other. This year I was voted on as chair, which was a very interesting and exciting learning lesson for me in that area of mahi. Another thing I'd like to highlight is the Mīharo Youth Focus candidates held during the ICC's by-election at the start of the year. I believe that this was the first event that we held for the year, and I have to say it was one impeccable night. I was thrown into the role of adjudicator, and the youth councillors there asked a lot of questions, as well as the wider rangatahi that was in attendance. I also heard that it was the best turnout during the whole election campaign, so props. We have a new mascot this year, who I brought with me today. This is our friendly guy, Dwight the Duck. He shares very inspiring and innovative ideas with us, and he actually made his way all the way down to Invercargill from Wellington with one of our youth councillors, Liam. And I have to add, he has had the best attendance this year of all of us. This year we've all grown together as a whānau and friendships have been formed and strengthened because of Youth Council. Ngā mihi.
This year we had a good uptake with the vaping survey that we circulated amongst students in July. We have recently shared the survey results with the Ministry of Health, which I'm super passionate about and I'm so excited to hear what they say, if they say anything back. Through many key learning and civic education, we have been taught leadership qualities and life skills, and these will continue to grow for all of us, and especially us on the summer committee holding the fort until we start again in February. We value the full voting youth positions offered to some of our team on council funding committees and have enjoyed hearing back on funding allocations made. I'd just like to say a big thank you to Councillor Ludlow for his outstanding attendance to all our meetings this year, and Councillor Crackett for her involvement, informative words, and another thank you to Councillor Broad for being really encouraging and supportive to all of our youth councillors.
Kia ora koutou. This year, sadly, one of our former youth council coordinators, Ollie, stepped down, but we were fortunate enough to have Danielle come on board this year, and it was really amazing having somebody else that came in with really amazing, fresh, new ideas, and it's been quite a journey. We opened applications for the 2024 Youth Council in September, and we've gotten over 40 applications for 25 positions next year. We've just finished holding our 3 interview sessions with the applicants shortlisted, and we're yet to make our decision on our successful members. this year I was lucky enough to be a part of the summer committee, made up of 5 of us youth councillors from this year, and we have some exciting projects that we're going to be doing over the summer. One of these is the full Youth Council Orientation Day, following from a pretty successful team day building at the Amaui camp with the Y this year. The summer committee is also planning a youth market day in February, so kids who wish to sell something they've made over the summer, or maybe get some toys out of that cupboard that mum's been yelling at them about for a while, or maybe just make a little bit more pocket money to give them a good start for the year, can come and have a bit of a stall. If you do want to do it, please feel free to message us on socials to register. Ngā mihi koutou, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us.
Kia ora, ngā mihi nui. Hana, Emma, thank you for your first year. I hope you have the opportunity to continue on. Alexander, congratulations on your 3 years, and we wish you all the very best for your next adventures in Christchurch. It's a brave thing to step into the world of local government when there's not a lot in the way of information or education that's done outside of this process. But this council has been, as I reflected at your meeting, very impressed with the way that you have thought through some issues and engaged with us, and when asked for opinions, if there wasn't one from the council, that you would point out that there wasn't one, but felt confident enough to share in your own, and from our observation that's been very well received. Councillors, any comments or questions that you have for the committee members? Tom.
So my question actually is about the extent to which you feel you have sufficient access to council. So in other words, while we welcome when you come, and we of course listen to what you say and we read your reports, but do you think that the Youth Council are comfortable that you have our ear? Do you have enough opportunity to come and speak to us, is really what I'm asking.
Yeah, we're lucky enough to have some pretty amazing councillors that come to our meetings that we can share insight to, and they share insight to us, so that gives us a little outlet. And then of course we have these meetings that we get to come and talk to you. So I do think we have enough, and it's pretty amazing that we get these opportunities.
Thank you.
Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's always great to see you young people here at council and hear your view of voice, and so it's really valued. And thank you for all your efforts. Just thinking through how we continue to ensure, the youth voice is heard at council, and not so much to Tom's question, but I'm interested in the breadth of feedback you're getting from youth in the city, and the initiatives you've got to reach as many young people as you can to get their perspective on our city and its future. Have you had any sort of thoughts about that, or? No right answer, so I'm just interested in your thoughts.
I think this year has gotten better, but I think we can always get better, and a way that we're trying to do this is from the the market day that we're doing in summer.
Yeah,
we want people to know that there's a youth council, because a lot of people don't actually know, so we're trying to get the name. But I think always room for improvement.
Yeah.
Something we want to grow.
Social media?
Yeah, so this year we have Gemma and Danielle have let us had more access to the social media, so we have kind of taken control of that. Not in a way, but we do want to get more out there, and social media is probably.
So how many people would follow you or engage with you on social media regularly?
I can speak to that actually. Seeing as we have opened up the social media accounts, most of the applications that we got for this year came from engagement on our social media accounts, which we got over 40 applications, which is very impressive. Yeah, it is. So I'd say what we're doing at the moment is working out quite well.
Yeah. But you don't record numbers or level of penetration into
followers? They don't have access to that, Grant.
They don't? No. So you're going to get them access, given you're the senior councillor?
No, that's held by the communications department.
Right, yeah.
The analytics.
Well, reality is it's an important channel that young people communicate in and on and through. And so our youth council will need to be connected to it somehow.
Yeah, but it's no different to any other staff member who doesn't have access to the analytics, and it's not a disrespectful thing, it's control over the device. If there's information that they need to know, all they've got to do, and it'll be provided, is ask and it'll be provided. But just open access to any social media account, somebody can put something up thinking it was hilarious, and it's all over the front page. Well, I think one of the other innovations actually that's come in, which the youth councillors touched on, is also the summer committee. So that's so that they're continuing over what's normally a several-month break. So they've got that momentum for those who have done their first year and want to continue through. And as they mentioned, they've got their project coming up in February. So that's some innovation as well. Trish.
I'm really impressed with the number of people you've got to interview for the Youth Council. Have you given any thought to the people who are unsuccessful? Will you keep their names sort of in some kind of database for you to be able to engage in the forward projects that you're doing?
Gemma, do you want to have a crack at that?
Kia ora, councillors. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Boyle, for your question. Yes, so Danielle and myself are keeping a list of the unsuccessful people, and we have let them know that they will be provided with an opportunity should we have a youth councillor resign during the year, or should there be a community board wishing to get a youth rep on board, we could tap into that that resource of those that were unable to make the 25.
It's amazing that you've been able to do that.
Pania.
Namahini noi kia koutou, e rangatahi. Just my question is really around, I'm interested in your Youth and Wellbeing Committee and the things that you are planning for, for the year over Christmas period and into next year. What are some of those sort of like ideas that you may have in the pipeline?
Do you mean a summer committee? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, the Youth Wellbeing Committee that you wrote about within the annual report. I'm just really interested in some maybe activities or ways that you reach young people that are at risk or requiring support in the community.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not going over summer, the Wellbeing Committee, it was just this year, but sorry, can you just repeat your question? Sorry.
Oh, my question, I'm just really interested in maybe any up and coming activities that you may have in the pipeline.
Oh, yeah, so I think we'll probably wait until February when we start next year with the new youth councillors and see where we take it from there.
Okay, thank you.
But we definitely, I definitely want to do something with it.
So by way of explanation, the Youth Council as a whole has planned that event in February, but for each of the committees they try and keep things within the year. It's difficult sometimes to transfer some of those other things over, but they'll start the 24 year with those who are interested in youth and wellbeing and looking to see what their key issues are and what projects they want to work on. So early in the year is a good time to get to them.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that.
Rhea.
Thank you for your in-depth report. I'm interested in the Community Advocacy and Volunteering Committee, and I note that the important areas that you touched on this in your last year has been the vaping, climate change and social wellbeing. But also note that you've mentioned when you verbalised that not a lot of the community knows that we do have a youth council. So what are the sorts of strategic planning will you look at to engage in, say, like your high schools, your sports days and significant school days, that you can kind of get in there and speak to those students about what it is that you do to bring more awareness?
So we have had a few youth councillors go to their schools and talk to their school about it. I'm sure we can look at doing some more events about youth council. We have had some quite, on the social media, from what we can see, we've had some quite good growth in it. We've had more, with the 40 applicants, we can see that it's getting outreach. There are people seeing it. Personally, I know that people have gone into schools, because I've definitely at least talked to my school about it, and people, so we're trying to in our own schools get it, but we haven't had like a set event about, hey, we're here, we're the youth council, come. We've got, all our meetings are always open. Anyone's happy to come and join, but I'm sure we can look at doing some open days or anything if that's what you're kind of wanting to see.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Although it's not for us to tell them what to do.
No, that's correct. I was going to say that. That would be cool, but that's actually up to you.
To be fair, the Youth Council does look at what it feels is going to be relevant to do and looks for opportunities for things that are happening within schools to see what they can leap in and capitalise. It depends on the members. So you've got some people who are new to it and possibly still learning and not that outgoing, and there are others who are just confident to put it out there. So it really depends on the individuals, but they are well supported.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Mayor Clark and then Steve.
Question for you, Chair. I just wondered whether, if you listen to what Tom said about council listening to youth council, whether there's an opportunity for our 4 committees, which are not decision making, to have a youth council representative attend. So it could be that a youth representative could attend each of the 4 council committees for say a 3-month period and then swap it over to somebody else. So you'd probably engage at least half the group that way by the actual nuts and bolts of coming to a council meeting. Most of them are 3 o'clock onwards, one being the exception, of course, but I'm sure you could get out of school for the early one. Whether that's an experience that could be potentially offered in the future.
I guess because they're open meetings, it's something that can be explored, whether or not there's speaking rights. There certainly isn't voting rights. But in the last year, I think we had, in the early stages of some of our long-term planning, we had a youth council representative along to the workshops and engage. So if there are those opportunities that they're interested in attending, then we can work through Gemma to make that happen.
Yep. I think it'd be helpful if they could be engaged with speaking rights at the committee level. They'd be tackled about their views when the items come up, so they have to be a little bit prepared.
I guess the challenge is, whose view are you listening to? So we're there as elected representatives, each with an individual mandate, versus them as somebody who might not have a direction from the youth council on how youth council wants to go. But as we've seen, they certainly have their own opinions and might like to share those. So maybe that's something they might like to kick around when they form in the new year.
I guess when we struggle to get youth involved in politics, both local and national, they tend not to vote. To me, this would be an opportunity of them seeing a much younger face. Interesting that I think in Nelson, the deputy mayor there is about 20, really innovating when he gets up to speak at national conferences. People really sit and listen. So maybe some options for some that want to do that.
We'll kick that around with the new council when it forms in the new year and see what opportunities they'd like to take, but we will put that to them. Yep. Steve?
I just want to say well done. I've been here for a short time, but have been so impressed. And you're right, that by-election, the campaign meeting that we had was so impressive. Just the turnout, but also the thoughtful questions and work that have been done in behind the scenes to bring to that meeting. And it's been a real privilege sitting in on the meetings that I have been to over the last few months. Just out of interest, really, this might be more for Gemma as well, but those 40 applicants, congratulations on that, firstly, and good work on your social media. I've been following and seeing what you've been doing. How do we go in terms of, I guess, age, the age span, and also just the covering of Invercargill schools? Just interested in how we went on that level.
You can answer it.
Oh, kia ora, Councillor Broad. So given that done most of the interviews, you probably had a fair idea. But actually a lot of younger applicants. Awesome. We did a wee booth, didn't we, at one of the junior campuses. We saw a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds come through. Lots of girls high students, but a make-up across the schools, including 2 representatives that were studying or in mahi that were around 19 and 20 years old. So awesome. We run from 12 to 24. We did see quite a diverse range of applications this round. Not as diverse as we'd like, but we're getting there. Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? If not, the recommendation is that we receive the report, the 2023 Youth Council Annual Report, which I'll move. Is there a seconder? Pania, thank you. Put that all in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Meri kere hamati.
Great Christmas.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillors, that brings us back to tab 4, the minutes of the Community Wellbeing Fund Subcommittee. And Councillor Crackett was
I'll move
chair.
those.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Councillor Soper seconded. Councillor Bond, thank you.
Sorry? Yes, you second.
Yes.
You should be.
Yes, I was there.
Any questions or comments? If not, I'll put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Community Wellbeing Committee from October 10, I'll move. This is seconder.
Second.
Councillor Soper, any issues?
Yes, I was present at the meeting. I was an apology for the meeting.
Thank you, we'll note that. That amendment, any other?
Sorry. I might have that wrong, one of them. So it's the minutes from the 28th September.
No.
No, beg your pardon?
The 10th of October.
The one before. All right.
Your
Yeah.
apology is in your
I
fund
didn't see it.
subcommittee.
Oh, sorry.
We've gone from that to
Have a seat.
this committee. So, no changes? No issues? Grant?
No.
Oh,
Gonna move it.
Leslie seconded.
Right.
Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Extraordinary Wellbeing Fund Subcommittee from October 20. Councillor Boyle.
Second that. I will move that, sorry.
Thank you. And seconded Councillor Soper. Any questions or issues? Put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We've got the minutes of the District Licensing Committee from October, which I'll move.
I'll second.
Seconded Councillor Bond. Any queries? Move. All in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. We've got the minutes of the gambling policies hearing held last week, which includes the recommendation. That is a recommendation that would go from this committee through to council for approval. The process is you either move it or not. And then the same will apply at council. Moved Councillor Campbell and seconded Councillor Bond. Any questions?
Just reflecting, Chair, I think it's, I couldn't attend, but for a layperson reading the minutes and some of the submissions was very confusing. I think some people got some distorted information around what we were attempting to do was the first issue, and secondly around how much money actually comes out of a pokie machine at the end of the day. So I was really pleased with the outcomes. I've had some experience in dealing with problem gamblers, and I think the cap with a shift to the CBD where that cap needs to apply, I think it's a really good outcome. I'm not sure I'd agree with 14 of 15 venues being high decile or high deprivation areas, but I think the outcome was very good for our community.
Across each time we've from when we brought the policy into each time when we've reviewed it, it is because of the seriousness of gambling harm, quite often a very emotive issue, but one that we received and debated in public.
Yep. Thank you.
Sorry, did I get a mover? Did? Yes, thank you. Put that then. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Invercargill City Council's tree plan. Welcome along, Caroline.
Kia ora koutou. So the tree management was raised at a previous Community Wellbeing Committee, and therefore brought this paper back to the committee just an update because changes in the council and such like. So it was actually created to ensure that our trees are managed and proactively in the best way possible for the future. There was the tree plan itself for 2020 was drafted after consultation with Mana Whenua council staff and key stakeholders. And our long-term priority is to have an appealing and sustainable network of diverse tree species of varying ages and stages. The plan itself focused on us having a clear direction of strategy, undertaking an inventory of all of our street trees, and also providing policy guidance for removals and renewals in the future, and ensuring that's a consistent approach to trees on our council land. With us having that ageing tree network, and the plan enables us to have a more proactively and effectively managed trees for the future. One of the key actions that we needed to take was to undertake some more annual scoping and a more of a risk assessment of the heritage trees in areas, and those were probably why the committee brought that up at the last meeting around how we're managing those trees. And also obviously the airport activity over Queen's Park was one of the other issues that we were asked to look into. So I've brought back an update as to how we're managing that piece of work. That piece of work being, we'd been asked to remove the 227 trees over the next few years. We've got 44 of those have currently been removed alongside our renewal program, so we're doing that quite proactively. And we're looking to review this entire plan for 2025. We have found that the plan itself enables us to remove trees quite well, but sometimes the replacement of those back into utility corridors has been quite challenging. So our next steps have been that in-depth assessment of the trees in the high-risk areas, and high risk, those that have got high volume, either people or traffic. We've done that assessment has been done. We don't have the report back for us yet. It was undertaken last week. Approximately 450 trees were reviewed. With that, with an in-depth assessment, we undertook the immediate removal of one that was deemed dangerous, and we're awaiting the management plans for any remainder. However, the majority of the remainder have been deemed to be in good health and well managed. Just waiting for some more specifics on those areas. So when we get to the review in 2025, we'll bring that back to the council for updates, ideas, and ensure that we go back out to the community for more consultation on the things that they found since we put it in place in 2020.
Thank you. It would be interesting if we could get an update on that assessment when it's complete.
Yep.
If that could come back to us next year. Mayor Clark?
So on page 42 of board books, it refers to the purpose of the tree plan being to look after 5,000 trees. And we're going to get a later report about the activity report that says, I think, that and this year we've planted nearly 10,000 trees, or I think 9,500. So the question, I guess, is do we not manage those trees that we're planting? Are they just planted and left, or do we just have an obligation to the 5,000 trees that are listed there?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. The 5,000 trees, it's actually it's between 5,000 and 6,000, and those are the street trees. So those are the trees in the utility corridors that we specifically did the inventory for, which is why we know the exact number.
Okay. Okay. Two other quick questions. On page 47, it refers to and bullet point 2 about showcase Invercargill / Murihiku. Just a minor technicality. Should that be Waihopai as opposed to Murihiku, which is much wider than just the city?
Although we need to incorporate Awaroa.
Yep. And the very last one, I'll get in before Leslie gets in, because she always picks up the typing mistakes. I think on page 53, the word dying is actually misspelled. It shouldn't have the E in it. Halfway down when it talks about live, dead and dying and decaying. I think dying is actually something to do with colouring, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they could be coloured in.
Could be. Yeah, thank you.
Trees.
Thank you. Grant.
This doesn't include any of the forestry top trees at Sandy Point.
No, it doesn't.
No.
No, the forestry trees are managed under the Sandy Point Domain Management Plan.
Yeah. Yeah, so the references into some areas of Sandy Point are specifically related to those recreational areas,
Yeah.
so likes around.
Yeah, the environmental areas and the recreational areas, yes.
In terms of monitoring, how many trees have fallen in the network as a result of weather events or, you know, at-risk trees that have actually fallen? Do we know that?
No, we don't. Councillor Dermot, it's not a statistic that we currently monitor for.
Yeah, because there's been quite a few on Queen's Park in recent weather events.
So we do have an inventory of the trees in Queen's Park. They aren't actually live on the GIS network just yet. It's still a piece of work. It's a piece of work in progress as part of the tree plan.
Yeah.
So we will be able to say how many of those have been removed or have come down since the inventory was undertaken, but we don't specifically monitor for that data.
So the person that's doing the risk assessment, how are you identifying the trees that he's going to assess?
So they were done, that was the high volume areas, the areas where we do have most either traffic or people. So Queen's Park, a lot of the trees in Queen's Park were undertaken, also those on the traffic corridors. So we identified, self-identified we started off with about 200 trees, but that's extended as as he's come on board and looked at the actual areas that we're looking at.
Okay, so given that we're going to commission someone to do an inspection, shouldn't we then measure how close to our forecast we are, in terms of, if we say there's 200 trees and 10% of trees fall outside of those identified trees, then clearly our identification of risk trees isn't quite as accurate as it should be. Is that a fair assumption to make?
We've just done a new assessment, so something that we could look at to the future.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Going forward, how are you going to monitor your sort of assessment accuracy?
We could definitely take that on board.
So you are going to monitor it?
We will look to how we can actually identify that data and make sure that we align it with the other inventories that we've got.
Yeah, because I think it's pretty important, because there's an element of public safety here, right? So if a tree falls over that we haven't classified in an exercise, or we have identified it as not a risk and it does fall over, then, you know, obviously there's a bit of issue. Thanks.
The higher risk areas are the ones that get priority. I guess one of the things that would have to be considered from a management point of view operationally is, if you're going to extend what's monitored and counted, which budget are we plucking that from?
Well, the point is, if we're hiring someone to do a specific role, how competent are they?
Well, it's also around the scope of work.
Because I could walk around and say, oh, that looks like a dangerous tree.
Thank you.
Couldn't I?
If you're pushing the scope of work out, obviously it's going to cost more.
But the report says we're going to get a specialist to do it.
Yes.
Right. So wouldn't we expect some sort of level of competency with that specialist to be able to identify a tree and have some level of accuracy around what a risky tree looks like?
Mr. Day?
Yeah, thank you. Through yourself, Chair. Just wanted to highlight which was said earlier in relation to, you've got to do a risk assessment in relation to where the tree's falling. Tree falling in a forest that has nobody going through it is a lower risk than a tree where your pedestrians are going past all the time.
But that doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out, though, does it?
Correct. And that's exactly what Carolyn highlighted through that initial assessment, was that it was initially 200 trees which were deemed to be in the high risk traffic areas from our perspective. They widened the scope in relation to some of the other discussions that happened at council to increase that to 450 trees. But our focus has been on the public safety in relation to the tree areas. Not in all, it's not a full tree coverage. It does come down to what can you do from a financial and where's the public truly at risk in relation to that. So that assessment's been taken.
Yeah, but to my point, so there's trees falling down in Queen's Park. Were they on the risk register? Have they not been assessed? Because they're pretty big trees and they fall across golf courses and places like that. Just happens to be that there's no one around at night. Well, that's lucky.
Well, I guess part of the, yes, they will have been on the risk register because they're in Queen's Park, and I think Caroline's already identified that those trees in those major thoroughfares are on the watch anyway. But there have also been some exceptional weather events. And so if the scale of the weather events is higher than we've experienced, that's going to create anomalies that might catch us out. I guess one of the things that we need to consider is, as a result of climate change and changing weather patterns, that might be something that we need to...
Well, surely that's what your experts are doing, isn't it? Because they've taken that into account when they're doing their assessment, I would have thought.
If we were the only place in New Zealand where trees were falling over during those exceptional weather events, I think we'd be concerned. But there were quite a few places that were caught by them. Not just us.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if we're getting a specialist look at it, they surely are identifying trees that are, you know, prone to a certain level of wind and a certain type of event.
Yeah, which brings us back to where we started. Every tree or the trees in the high risk areas? Because if it's every tree, we're going to upscale the budget.
Well, it's not every tree, is it?
Well, that was the question I just asked. So if we're looking at the high risk areas, then absolutely, that's where we want to make sure we've got a focus. Leslie, and then Rhea, and then Tom. Welcome, Barry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to remind people of some of the history which predates some councillors at the table of why we've got the tree plan at all. So it was, I believe, the event some years ago of several trees coming down in Queen's Park close to the museum, and
Victoria
the
Avenue.
infrastructure chair and deputy chair at the time, I think that was councillors Thomas and Pottinger, who raised the fact that we didn't have the sort of inventory that formed into the tree plan. So that's the history. So it was always intended that the highest risk trees be addressed. That was where the 200 came from. As the CE said, it got extended to about 450. And it was a new and developing plan that was meant to prepare us much better than we were prepared, where it was more of an exercise of clearing up from fallen trees that had come down in various areas. I think we had another incident of some coming down at Donovan Park, fortunately in a not particularly populated area. So the history was that the tree plan was quite recent. It was inspired by events that were largely in Queen's Park, and it was certainly intended that it targeted the high risk trees and gave us an inventory and a way of checking, even on an annual basis, that we had the identified highest risk trees. And I realise there have been some fairly heavy weather events, but I had understood that it was that yearly expert look to just ensure that we had things at the risk level they should be at. Perhaps Carolyn can confirm.
And that yearly check was done last week.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's what we're waiting for the full report from. We've just had some verbal updates so far.
And that was done by the specialist.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Thank you. That was my understanding.
Ria.
Thank you, Caroline, for your report and also the attached tree plan that is an update from last time. Thanks, Leslie, for the history. But what I was looking at is the Invercargill Airport Limited request to remove Queen's Park trees. So 65 of those are high priority trees out of 227 trees over the 2-year period. 44 of those trees have been felled or removed. I'm interested when you said about, I call it repopulation. I'm assuming that the trees that will replace those are sufficient for the area that they're going back into, so that we don't find in my kids' generation, when they're sitting around this table, we're going to chop them back down again. So are we prioritising the species of trees?
Absolutely.
We are, that's great.
Absolutely, that's what the tree plan enables us to do, to actually be more specific
And
around the trees that are placed.
Yeah, so that's really good. The other thing I wanted to question is, do you think that these trees, these high priority risk trees, that they will be dealt to over a 2-year period is sufficient enough? Do they need to come down prior to that, given we are in a weather pattern at the moment that is going to be high winds?
That's a great question. That's why it would be really good if I can come back when the report has been received from the specialist, because I'm expecting some management plans to come from him. As I say, he's indicated verbally that the majority of the trees are in good health. There may be some remedial action, but we've only had that one tree that we were asked to remove advised to remove immediately.
Right, so there were 2 trees removed, and one tree, in the weekend at the golf course that so when the trees are removed, and I'm sorry if this is an operational question, how quickly is it that that whole area is tied up so that there is no debris left over for anyone to hurt themselves on?
The single tree that came down had to come down, as we say, quite quickly. There are a number of others there that we would like to take down, but they were not as urgent as that one. So when that whole area has been remediated, then it will be cleaned up.
So the whole lot will be moved at once?
A number. I'm not quite sure exactly how many are coming from that area, but we took out the one immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Tom.
Thank you, Chair. Caroline, people feel very protective of trees, as we want them to be. And it's the whole reason, really, for having this policy. Can you just clarify, though, whether we ever remove non-native trees to replace them with indigenous trees, and only for that reason?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, thank you. Because there is a belief that happens, but it doesn't. So we don't replace mature oaks with, just because it happens to, because we want to replace it with an indigenous tree?
No, that wouldn't happen, Councillor.
No. Okay, thank you.
Good question, though. Barry.
Yes, as far as the trees that I was at North End Bowling Club during the weekend, there's a row of trees, and I believe they are going to come down because there's a walkway going to the museum. Is there a time span on that when those trees are going to be removed?
I don't have that with me, Councillor Stewart, to tell you
They're
that.
huge, those ones. If
Yeah.
they come down, they'll take that Bond Club out anyway.
Well, they're not the only ones.
Yeah.
As you pointed out, there's some
Yeah.
nice biggies on Ellis Road as well.
And Don Street,
Rainey.
Thanks, Chair. My question is around street trees and council infrastructure such as footpaths. The other morning, I think it was yesterday morning, I ran down Swinton Street and I've never been down there before, but had to divert to the road to run on because the footpath had looked like it had undergone a massive seismic activity. It was like a ripple, and on looking at it more closely, it was the roots from the trees breaking right through the footpath underneath it towards the house. So what happens there? Does infrastructure come along and replace the footpath and kill the trees? Because obviously the roots will have to be taken out, or how do you work through that? Because it is a beautiful tree-lined street, but those roots have just gone. It's the footpath is made of some sort of tar seal or something like that.
I would think that was actually an infrastructure matter, because we would take advice from infrastructure managers as to what they needed.
Well, it's a tree, but we don't want to kill trees. So where do we? That's why I'm raising it now.
Smooth pavement, or
no, with the roots. If we've got to chop the roots off at all the west-facing roots, that's not going to be good for the tree.
Not going to be good for them in the wind either.
No. That's what I mean. So how do we work this?
Usually on a case-by-case basis, Councillor Pottinger.
I mean, it's a whole street,
yeah.
so we're talking 2 blocks.
I couldn't tell you specifically, but it's usually a very significant conversation between ourselves and infrastructure.
Okay.
And we, obviously the value of the trees to those to the community there is very high, and so we would involve the community in any decision to remove any amount of trees in,
I
in that
actually
area.
couldn't believe that no one's complained. Seriously, you could not, a person in a roller or walker or whatever could not traverse. Say,
maybe they were worried they would lose the trees.
I don't know,
because they do look spectacular.
We'll see it in the December infrastructure meeting.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, would somebody like to move that we receive the report and acknowledges the issues that council is planning to overcome? Leslie and Trish, put that all in favour.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Tab 10 is the temporary alcohol ban, which goes in for Christmas at the races. Again, this is just procedural and something we go through each year. Gillian, is there anything you want to add to the report?
That pretty much covers it, Councillor Ludlow. Probably the only additional information this year is that in the past, Council has shared the cost of the signage for the temporary alcohol ban with Southland Racing Club, and we've spoken with the Racing Club this year, and they have agreed that from 2024 event onwards that they'll cover the full cost of that. The cost of that this year is $1,300 that will be shared between Council and the Racing Club.
Thank you. There's 2 recommendations. If there's a mover. Mayor Clark and Rhea. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye. Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Gillian. Rhiannon, update to the framework for the Community Wellbeing Fund.
Kia ora, Chair, Councillors. So this report really is an opportunity both to provide an update on the work that the fund has done and an update on the framework itself. The fund committee has met, they've workshopped what some improvements they would like to make to the way that the fund operates, and they're recommending those through to this committee for your consideration today. Those are to bring the fund into alignment with the Council's new updated strategic framework for this long-term plan, such as a small minor change around the way that the wellbeings and the scoring is structured, and then some minor administrative changes. So we're just seeing up on the screen now just an overview of some of the great projects and outcomes that the fund has supported.
You just have to scroll, please.
So it's just a good opportunity just to celebrate all the amazing mahi in the community that the fund has supported and enabled. I'll just take the report as read, and the chair of the committee may wish to say something.
Anything you'd like to add?
I would like to acknowledge the work that Gemma does. It's totally outstanding. It's presented to us in such a way as that we have a very clear picture of what we're doing, and the meetings are great. It's a real privilege to be part of them, and I think they're well managed. So thank you. I have nothing to add otherwise.
Thank you. 4 recommendations, Trish. Are you wanting to move them?
Yes, I'd like to have them. Thank you.
Seconded by Rhea. It's open for questions, councillors. Mayor Clark.
And I just wanted to know from the chair of the thing, just a couple of questions about the allocations that were made. The one on the South Sea Spray Trust, is that in this financial year, one that we're currently in, or is it the previous financial year?
I think it was previous. Yes, previous.
Previous, that's okay, because I know they're going out to Winton. And the other one for me was, I guess, a little bit unease about contributing to a Green Acres Country Club practice green development. I suppose it meets the criteria, but in some ways it's a little bit like, does that open us up to just about every sports club wanting to have some development as well?
I think you can be sure that these are debated very clearly.
Sure, I understand that.
And that that definitely is foremost when we do make decisions. Yep. I'm comfortable in the decisions that have been made. Yep. Would somebody else from the committee like to make a comment?
Absolutely. I mean, I think...
I understand what you're saying, though.
Yeah, definitely. We totally understand what you're saying. But when they do come through with the application, it's fairly extensive with the information that they provide. I don't think it will set a precedent for every golf club to do this, because other golf clubs offer different things to their members. Sure. But we do debate it, and the people that we have involved in this committee are within our community, and the information and knowledge that they bring back through allows us to have that healthy debate. So I feel very confident in the practices that we're doing when we're considering applications.
In that instance, though, just a question perhaps for Gemma, would that have been better redirected potentially to the Active Communities Fund?
So just through you, Chair, I just had a wee look. Kia ora, councillors, Mayor and Councillor Ludlow, mana whenua reps. We didn't actually allocate them any money. It's as a zero. They applied to us, and right. it was re-evaluated, and they were absolutely pointed in the direction of some other...
Useful talk. Thanks, Gemma.
And the last one, Trish, was just the issue of the naked creator that does the Life magazine. And I'm aware of the magazine. Oh, okay. Can you help us with what sort of reach does that magazine get? I'll say why I ask is we've got box loads of the things sitting in there.
It's apparently Southland. Yeah. It's a money making thing. We did have some quite a lot of discussion around this and debate. It is given for free to some licensing trust establishments who fund it as well.
Sure.
It's listed as a zero allocation, if that's any help with the comments.
So
it is a zero allocation. So obviously I wasn't on the committee at the time, but obviously a decision was made.
Definitely, yeah.
It's got some excellent contributors.
Yes, thank you.
Grant.
Yeah, thanks. You just wanted to reinforce Trish's comments around the work that Gemma does, and probably it's been highlighted in the last couple of questions, just the robustness with which that fund's administered, and not only sort of the way it's allocated, but equally the accountability comes back to the committee as well. So it's a very effective committee. So well done to everyone involved.
Thanks for that. Any further questions? With full recommendations, then I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Excuse me, I'm still recovering from 2 weeks with no voice, which my wife thoroughly enjoyed.
Oh, Linda will love that.
We've dealt with item 12, so that brings us to, speaking of which, the Active Communities Fund update, which Rhiannon is a report that we've had through.
So kia ora, Chair. I think the report speaks for itself. This is the first year update from Active Southland on the funding that they took over administration from Council, and where they will be providing an annual update in terms of how that fund administration has been going.
Just if I can feedback as Council's rep on that committee, and I think I fed into a workshop recently, they're doing a really good job of broadening the horizon and testing the applications as they come in. It's been a learning process for some of the committee members when we get applications for great projects that aren't specifically Invercargill, and they're being forced to consider, well, what's the Invercargill component of that, because that's all that we can allocate funds to. So that was a learning for them. For some of the committee members, but the management that Active Southland have provided has been great, collaborative and reactive. So we've been able to refine it very quickly as we've gone through. Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add, as the former chair of the Council's Active Communities Fund, who transferred the funding for the very reasons you've outlined, I've followed the progress since we transferred the fund with some interest, and I just want to say that I feel that it is on track to have done what we wanted it to do, in that it has definitely widened the application. It's allowed the consideration of the sporting requests holistically with other funds, rather than us in the old days having to say, have you approached these other funds, etc. It's allowed a much more holistic way of dealing with things. So I do feel it's on track. I look forward to the continuing reports, but I feel it has fulfilled what we wanted with what was the old Hillary Commission money. So it is good to see it being used ongoingly, productively.
I guess it's worth adding that Active Southland also administer the Te Manawa Fund, and because they are, a go-to place for sporting organisations, Active Southland do a pretty good job of redirecting applicants to the right fund as well, which has been good. Some have come our way, some we've shunted over to Te Manawa. Tom.
I was just going to ask a question, Chair, whether the previous trust allocated funds to registration fees, or if that's a new thing. I was just a little bit surprised to see significant amounts of money being allocated for registration fees, and I particularly noticed the Southern Queens Boxing with $6,000 allocated to registration fees. Yep. So my question is not so much about that, it's more about whether that is a change.
Fair, yes, it is. Fair question. No, it wouldn't have been previously, but one of the new directions that they have looked at with our consent is around accessibility. So for those for whom cost is an absolute barrier, and trying to help them overcome that, again with a city focus. So there are things that we wouldn't have paid for previously, and there's a bit of debate goes on over the amounts as well, as you get with any funding committee, but no, that is something new.
Okay, thank you.
It's been moved and seconded that we receive the report, I think. No, I'll move it.
I'll move. I'll second it.
Seconded, Leslie. Put that all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thanks, Gemma. Thanks, Rhiannon. Which brings us to the activities report. Lots going on, and even though we acknowledged it, I think at the last meeting, it's reported on in this report about the staff here at Te Hanaki who stayed on during the weather events recently to work after hours to make sure that everyone's calls were tended to. That's that's the sort of above and beyond stuff that they weren't asked to, they wanted to, and we're really proud of the efforts. So please pass that on. Are there any areas in there that councillors wish to ask questions of? Mayor Clark.
Yeah, two issues. Well, just one was a reflection of the food stalls that we had last Friday, and this report reflects back on the previous one in September. Really good numbers turning out. They said 3,000 for the previous event. I think the one on Friday had more than that. So it's an evolving direction, I guess, with our city. Questions to be asked about how late it goes, whether we have more food stalls, because there weren't enough, I don't think, or not of the right stuff, and whether we have an appetite to introduce alcohol for some events as well around the district licensing laws and other things that sometimes get in our way. So, but a really positive thing, and it was pleasing that Great South introduced a local band for that event as well. So there's more coming in that space. The other issue was the issue of the that I raised before about the tree planting, which is on page 182 of board books. We set out a target, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, to plant one native tree for every resident in the city. So that ballpark about 57,000. And it said in that report, the report that we've got here, that in a short period of time, about 6 months, we've planted about 9,500. So my question was really, how close are we to that 57,000 target, or is that still some ways off? Because it would be a really nice goal to get to.
Rhiannon?
You received an update on that in the climate change report. I can't remember the exact figure, but it's somewhere between 20 and 26,000 trees have been planted over 3 years.
And I guess the last reflection I would make is on page 183. Actually, two reflections. One is the trail bike tracks that have been set up on Bluff Hill. I think there'll be a significant draw card over time. Certainly if you go into Clyde, you see the same sort of impact there with the tracks that are there now. One of the things that worries me is we don't have the infrastructure in Bluff to cope with the demand that might come along. So for argument's sake, where do you park a camper van in Bluff? Because a lot of the people that do this mountain bike stuff actually have camp vans as well, and there seems to be nowhere. Well, that's the issue. The camping ground is up for sale. Well, it shouldn't have for sale, up for disposal, I guess. And whether we can develop something that incorporates camper vans down there, whether or not there's any appetite in Bluff for Argyle Park, which is adjacent to it, for part of that to be converted. Don't have a heart attack before I finish. So, and it might very well be that we look to not just take away some land, but actually give some land. So the giving of the land could be a pump track that's similar to the one at Otara for the younger people in Bluff to play on, as opposed to going onto the hill itself. So I just think there's potential there that we're not quite getting to. The very last thing is on the following page, which talks about centre plots. I get a lot of feedback from people who say that our centre plots in the city look poor. They are not well managed, and they don't have a lot of colour. And I often get feedback from staff saying, well, it's not that easy. You've got to put a safety code around when you go and do work in them, and they require a lot of work. So it was interesting. I was coming back from Dunedin the other day in Gore, and I saw the gardening woman that was there, obviously a city council employee, putting out her own cones right on the bend, and she come around by the old police station, and the way she went, I just thought, well, that was really easy. Why can't we do that as well? Why did it become too much?
I think we do, as long as there's a traffic management plan in place.
Yeah, but the traffic management plan often requires a third party who you need to book in well in advance.
Shouldn't need to.
Okay.
Yeah, because if there's a plan submitted, anyone who can read the plan should be able to go and
Okay.
So, but it's a really good point.
Thank you.
To echo a former council employee who we used to give a grilling about roads, they can do anything you like if you give them enough money.
Sure.
I'll reflect on the Friday night event.
Here's what I found.
Oh.
What'd you find?
Rang, he found Siri.
I'm trying to get my
That's
iPad
what
to work,
happens
so-
when old people interfere with technology.
Correct.
No. That's a good thing.
The licensing.
It was well, not the licensing. Would be a challenge. It's not insurmountable, but I guess the challenge with the night market is it's a really family-friendly event.
Sure.
You had right on the cusp of it on one side the people in Niche and on the other side the people at Tillerman's who, you know, if people needed a drink, they knew where to go, and there didn't seem to be anyone who was critical of it. If I had one criticism, it was probably as I was walking past the free entertainment, and it was Mongolian throat singing, heavy rock, which wasn't really my cup of tea.
Yep.
But if you wanted to talk about diversity and variety in the performance, there was a really great atmosphere. A lot of people got out and engaged in the evening, and I would say it was a success. Certainly, the improving weather makes it even better. It would be obviously a challenge over the winter months. We'll come to you in just a moment, Pania. Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to remind councillors that some of the centre plots, because I too get some of those queries coming in from our public, and some of those centre plots don't actually fall under council's maintenance. They're actually Kotahi roading corridors. But having said that, there is one that we obviously do maintain that's on a Highway 1, which is out near Racecourse and Tay. But yeah, I just want to highlight that too, because one of the ones I get all the time is one of those particular centre plots. So we will have conversations to see what we can do there.
Thanks, Michael. I've got Ria, Pania and Grant. So Ria?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just looking at page 174 of diligence. I'm looking at the area of environmental compliance, and I wanted to ask a question of what constitutes an overgrown section.
Gillian. A savanna.
Well, hold on, wait for my response.
So overgrown sections are dealt with in the environmental health bylaw. The minimum length of the grass and weeds has to be 25 centimetres before it's considered overgrown. There will be other details, but I can't quite remember them all.
Health issues if there are rats in there and the like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, well, the reason why I've asked that question and looked at that is there is, and it may be that it's under a different bylaw, I'm not sure, but from Bay Road to Drury Lane, we've got sections full of cars.
It's zoned industrial.
Industrial, right. Well, that was my next question. So do we have an industrial overgrown?
Nope.
No.
I asked the question.
However, the
about
land
this
is being
particular.
investigated by Environment South and to see if there is any contamination.
It was being investigated a year ago when I asked the question.
Well, you might like to forward that to Environment South.
Okay. Thank you.
Pania.
I love on page, where am I? 13. Yeah, page 13. So I think it's really good around the promotion of vegetables growing in Otakaro Park and Queen's Park. Has it, I mean, I think this is a great idea. Is there any consideration on expanding where vegetables are grown in these types of gardens for community? I'm just thinking of Bluff. We have a long strip, lots of greenery on one side, but we have nothing like this.
I know the stuff at Anderson Park, but the one in Bluff might be the domain of Waka Kotahi, I think, again. Michael.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Look, we do work quite proactively with the parks team across where we have those locations. There are some community vegetable gardens as well from that perspective, so we try and get the balance and work with the community on those. If there's suggestions that council want to bring forward, we can take it through to our parks and parks team and consider those in our next planting schedules.
Thanks. Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A few questions. Page 181 of Bull Box. The tracks and trails, it'd be good to see sort of year on year there as well, because I think it's a good indicator around, you know, how our tracks are being used, and to me it's a big wellness indicator as well. If people are active and out and about, it's a good indication of the health of our community, whereas for some reason if they're not out, then maybe it's an insight. So it'd be good to see it year on year.
Now we're gathering that we can.
Yeah, that's right. Secondly, 183, the introduction, new local pay advocate. Local play.
Dr. Play.
So that's a council position?
Yes.
So given we were pretty lukewarm at our recent workshop on sort of urban play, and we've pushed it way down the priority list in terms of our long-term plan.
So it's a position within council, but it's paid for by
Funded
Sport New Zealand.
Right.
So we're leveraging
Wouldn't
off
turn
it
it down.
and taking advantage of their
So
funding.
it doesn't create any additional cost in terms of. Right.
Yeah, it is the proverbial gift horse. So it'd be interesting to see what Dr. Blake comes up with. The challenge is, financially facilitating potentially some of the suggestions that comes forward, and that comes back to the issue that you were just talking about with the
That's right. So
discussions
do
we
we
were having
accept,
recently.
accept funding from national bodies when it doesn't align with their long-term plan in the immediate future? I mean,
Well, it depends what options they're able to come up with. If there are low-cost or no-cost options, Michael.
Through yourself, Chair. Look, no, every external funding that we do get, offer, we do look at it from perspective of how it fits within the council priorities. Obviously, play is something that council have an interest in, and this allows us to get some work done with our council contribution in relation to it. Whether it actually ends up leading to work that we need to look at and fund ongoing, that is something that would need to come back to council in all those cases. But we do, from our perspective, we don't take up every opportunity. We do have to be careful about what opportunities we do take up. It's not always a gift horse. From that perspective, sometimes it's actually a little bit of a noose when you look at it from that perspective.
So we've taken funding from national on a position, hired someone, but there's no budget allocated to it. Because if there's no cost or expense associated with the role, then there's no budget allocated to it.
It's fully funded from that perspective.
Including all the activities they'll undertake. Right. That's interesting.
Mayor Clark.
Just one question on page 186. And Chair, you've got an extensive history in this area, so you can wear the question, I guess. It just seems as though we're dragging our feet on naming Tisbury and the associated trust. So we've had a bit of progress in that area, but I don't know why we make the statement the board are also reviewing their name. These are directors appointed to a trust that we've set up to manage the collections on a regional basis. We should just get on and name whatever that trust needs to be. Call it Murihiku, call it Southland Regional Collection Trust, or whatever it needs to be, because while we keep dragging our feet on that, everybody thinks these directors are involved with the museum, which they're not. They're purely the collection. I don't know why they've got a meeting in December where they're going to nominate a chair, but at the same meeting they can't decide on what their name's going to be. So,
I'm no longer involved. Michael, are you able to?
surely you've got a finger in the pie there somewhere.
Through yourself, Chair, we're not in a position because it's now not a CCTO of any sort, so it's actually an independent trust. They have the ability and right to name themselves from that perspective. We've declared we would have a preference that they change their name, and that has been clear the whole way through, and was asked that they do that as soon as possible, but they want to have a chair in place before they tackle that issue. I know they do have it as a high priority.
Yeah, it should be, because it's no longer the Southern Museum and Art Gallery Trust Board. It's far from that. So I think if we're able to reinforce that with them, that would be useful. Rhea.
Page 178 on the venues and events, I note the Rugby Park first paragraph, then coming down to the second one. Does this not read incorrectly? The trust was returned back to the council?
So the ground was owned by the Invercargill City Council Charitable Trust, and was being vested into the ownership of the Invercargill City Council rather than the trust.
Right. I just think the way that it's worded it's ambiguous, because when I'm reading this, it says that we're currently negotiating regarding the sale and purchase of Rugby Park, and that's in progress.
Yep.
I just don't think it's quite.
As one of the trustees, Mayor Clark.
Yes, thank you. Look, Rhea, I've been a trustee on this for a while. I can't make head and tail of it either. If you go back on the history of how we inherited this Rugby Park, I still don't understand years later. So we have to technically sell it from the trust to the council.
Right.
That's the mechanism that we do. So we're not actually selling it. It's the
changing
ownership
hands.
of it goes from the charitable trust back into
here.
core services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand
But
it,
it's
just the way
messy
it
as,
reads.
you know.
Yeah.
I think the intention at the time was that if it was vested in a charitable trust, as it had been with Rugby Park, previous trust, that there was the opportunity for that trust to be able to apply for funding. But actually, I don't think the trust had been properly set up, so it created some challenges. So this process should unwind that. Tom?
I mean, it's the same question, I guess, but I never took Ria's question as being about, you know, why it was happening. It was more about the wording of the paragraph, which states pretty simply that we're selling Rugby Park, which is clearly not the case. So I think it's definitely open to misinterpretation, and just need clarified, as I guess we have just done. Yeah.
Yep. Look, to be fair, I circled it myself and gone, and it took me a couple of minutes to unpack what it meant. So you're quite right, the wording is ambiguous.
I'd certainly be looking at that gift horse.
Yep, thanks. Any other items that anybody wishes to raise? If not, would somebody like to move that we receive the activities report? Trish and Rhea, put that all in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. There being no further items in open, I'll move that we go into public excluded to discuss the minutes of the PX part of the Community Wellbeing Fund Subcommittee, September 28th, Public Excluded Wellbeing Committee, October 10th, and the Public Excluded Extraordinary Community Wellbeing Fund Committee on October 20. And the reasons are under section 7.2i, H, G, and B2, or BII.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Put that all in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thanks to those that have joined us on the live stream. Our public excluded session should not be taking too long, so the